talk about Barbarians. Thank you for taking time out.
Thank you.
The film has just had its world premiere at Fantastic Fest.
Yep.
Today it was announced that you're going to be at the Fright Fest Halloween event.
Yep.
After all this time, how does it feel to finally get this film out into the world and get it in front of audiences?
It felt quite scary in Austin, because it was the first time that I was showing it to an audience that hadn't worked on it. It feels really good also because essentially I made it for an audience, Austin, it was so happy to be invited, and it was really special. I'd never been, because of the COVID restrictions. It was quite tricky getting there, and because of that it was literally just me. So being invited to be in London and to be able to share it with all the crew and the cast, and other people who I know in London, and to be invited and having such a great slot at Fright Fest, I'm actually really excited about that, because it's 400 seats. I'm just really excited.
Well, it's a super screen, isn't it? It's going to be big. It's not just a normal screen. It's one of the big ones. So
making me nervous now, but yeah.
All right. You've got a background in producing. What was it that made you make the leap from producing to writing and directing?
Well, originally I studied theatre, and I was an actor for a while, and then I went into producing. So I've always enjoyed working creatively with writers, and I actually kept up acting on the side. And originally I wrote Barbarians to be in, and then it sort of developed into something bigger than that, and I decided I wanted to direct. But in truth, I always wanted to direct. Yeah.
Where did the idea for Barbarians come from? I'm hoping that it wasn't from personal experience.
No, not exactly. There's elements in probably both Adam and Lucas that is me, probably, and probably also Chloe and Eva. I wrote them as I wrote them, so they're probably all slightly me. There's a lot of the dinner party stuff that I've experienced. It started off, I was just going to make a film in my flat, so I started writing a dinner party, and I've been involved in so many plays. I knew how interesting interpersonal relationships can be when you put them together. So that was the sort of starting point. But then when I really started thinking about what ideas I wanted to explore for myself, the idea of what would happen came to me, and it became something quite different, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and one of the things that I really enjoyed was how natural the dialogue sounded, and how the performances felt. Everything felt like really natural. What was the hardest aspect of that to get right when you were scripting and shooting?
Well, I acted it out. I acted it all out in my kitchen. So for all the parts, so it was quite a weird thing. I wouldn't say I'm a natural writer, but I can rehearse and play, mess about. So there was probably a lot more there than ended up on the page. So it was just, yeah, that was the process, I guess. What was the most difficult thing? We rehearsed it, particularly the dinner table. It had to be quite specific. I know it sounds quite naturalistic, but all the interjections and yeses and ums and nos, they were written quite specifically. So I think rehearsals was really important, particularly the dinner party.
But I guess it's something that doesn't tend to happen that much on sort of indie budget films. It's normally get a camera and go. So it must have been nice to sort of have that time to rehearse.
Yeah, I think the actors were quite shocked. They were quite shocked. But yeah, also it was probably the place where I felt most comfortable, so it was good for me as well. It was 3 days. It wasn't a long time, but that's what we focused on.
It's more than some films get. Some films it's literally like, right, you guys have been married for 20 years, go.
Yeah, exactly. exactly. And yeah, and I think one of the big things about it was, yes, we rehearsed it and we rehearsed dialogue, but I was there to answer any questions. And particularly the relationships are so important, and I'd thought a lot about their backstory and how that all came about. So rather than answering that stuff on set, I think that saved a lot of time. Sorry, turning something off.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, sort of the relationships that you mentioned, they are so intricate, and I sort of like how everybody treats Adam sort of in a very similar way, like
Yeah,
Heather's almost like his mother, she's like wiping his cheek
yeah,
and
yeah,
so sorry. And then Lucas sort of belittles him, and even Chloe's like says like good boy to him, so I
yeah.
guess was that was that an intentional thing to sort of build upon Adam's frustrations?
Yeah. I mean, yes. So yeah, the idea was to pile on as much pressure on him as possible. But the challenge was, he's quite a passive character. So on the page, there's like there's a lot of pages where there's not even any dialogue. There's just no action from him. But that's why having Ewan was so fantastic, because he's, such a talented actor, and just, the camera loves him. He's just watching him listen is has a lot of meaning to it. So, but I think yeah, I was really interested in Adam's character being sort of an adult child,
Yeah.
and having the way to do that is have a lot of people treat him like that.
I mean, it's
and for him to allow that to happen.
Yeah, it's a very different it's a very different character than what most people, I guess, are used to seeing from Ewan. So what was it about him that made you certain that he could handle this character? Because it's a very passive, complex character, whereas he's known for Game of Thrones, where he's this evil, charismatic
Yeah.
sort of character.
I mean, I'd seen Misfits as well, where he's brilliant in that, and I tried to watch everything I could of his before I met him. I mean, in truth, he got sent the script and was up for meeting me, and we had a general chat. He said he liked the script and agreed to do it, which was at the time quite shocking and really encouraging. But yeah, he was perfect for it, so I'm very happy.
I guess there's only like four principal cast. But who was was it Adam that was cast first, and then you sort of then retrofitted actors that would work around them, or like a bit of a game of chess really with these characters and how they interact. So you have to get the right balance.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, particularly the relationships between the two. Well, they all have different relationships, so yeah, it needed to make sense. Tom was actually the first person I've ever auditioned, and he was fantastic. Then I sort of carried on going through the process, but I really loved, he's so good in this. It's really good to watch. And then it was a happy accident that those guys are actually, they're both from Wales and have a sort of shared, I don't think they'd never worked together, but they immediately hit it off and were able to like understand that sort of bromance. And yeah, that was probably the initial bit of casting that made most sense.
And your fifth character is the house location. How did you stumble across that? Because it's such an integral part of this film.
Yeah, we saw a lot of houses. There's a short answer to that. We saw a lot of houses, and actually none of them were perfect. It was written quite specifically with the space. So we actually had to build the bedroom and the bathroom. But the main space itself and the grounds were perfect.
And it's my final question. The film's broken down into chapters, which I think is a really interesting way to tell the story. Why did you decide that you wanted to tell it in this way? Because it's almost, I guess, it's sort of like watching a play, but also like reading a book, and the chapters really make you want to like get to that next scene.
Yeah, I mean that's strategy. You know, it makes people aware of getting the next thing. Sort of takes you out of it for a second and makes you aware you're watching a story, which was important to me. I don't want to give anything away, but one of the challenges was to connect the film throughout, and I felt like that definitely helped. And when I was writing it, I was aware of a quote from Kubrick, which was, a film could be made up of 6 to 8 non-submersible units. So that's, I focused on them as units, and that's what I called them. And I decided not to make the decision whether or not I'd put the title cards in until the end, and then I did, and I loved it.
Cool. Well, I will wish you the best of luck with future screenings, and I will see you at Brightfest.
Brilliant. Oh, thank you very much. See you there.